I now declare the Plano City Council is convened in open session, that all council members are present with the exception of Councilmember Riccadelli and Councilmember Smith, and Mayor Pro Tem Prince will be on Zoom. The council will now recess into executive session in training room A to hold a closed executive meeting pursuant to the provisions of Vernon's Texas Codes, Annotated Government Code, Chapter 551. The Open Meetings Act, in accordance with the authority contained in 551.071, to consult with the attorney, receive legal advice, and discuss litigation. 551.087, to discuss economic development matters, and 551.071, to discuss real estate matters. Thanks. I now declare the Plano City Council preliminary open meeting is reconvened in open session, that all council members are present with the exception of Mayor Pro Tem Prince, who will be on Zoom. Council member Rick Smith will be on Zoom, and Council member Julie Holmer will be here momentarily. Our first item on the preliminary agendas is consideration and action resulting from the executive session.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to settle the fire training facility contract dispute in accordance with the authority discussed in the executive session.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and second to approve the settlement. Let's all just vote with our hands. All in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Next item, policy and government relations update. Andrew.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Andrew Fortune, Director of Policy and Government Relations. Wanted to bring to your attention some ongoing efforts that we have in collaboration with our engineering department and our utility partners. As you know, whenever we have a large infrastructure project, a street widening, a bridge reconstruction, oftentimes we have to collaborate with our utility partners to move their utilities that exist in our public right-of-way. We have done a number of various efforts, coordination meetings, reaching out various different modes of communication. Unfortunately, during my time with the city, we have not seen much improvement really when it comes to these relocations. And so my recommendation, and I think recommendation of other staff members as well, is to move forward into the new year, really enforcing an ordinance that we have on the books already. And that ordinance would require that once we give them notice, they have to move their utilities within 90 days. If they don't move those utilities, then we have the authority to move forward and move them ourselves, and then we would back bill that company. Now, 90 days may sound like a short time frame. We're oftentimes communicating years in advance with these projects. Y'all know we fund them. We go through the design process, the planning process. We're communicating all the way down the line. One of the more egregious projects recently is going to cost over $200,000 because of one utility's inability to move within the time frame. So when we're looking at trying to be good stewards and trying to make sure that we're moving forward with our projects both in a financially prudent manner but also in an expedient manner, my recommendation is to move forward enforcing this. So I wanted to let y'all know. I've alerted members of our delegation in case they get calls, questions from the utility companies. And I think our plan moving forward is to notify them, remind them this ordinance is on the books, and proceed accordingly.
Any questions for Andrew?
Thank you so much.
Okay, the next item, item 3, discussion and direction regarding Cultural Arts Commission funding applications for 24-25.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, City Council, and City Executives. I'm Diane Goebel, and I'm Chair of the Cultural Arts Commission. And I'm here tonight to present the Commission's recommendations for revisions to the grant application. And on behalf of the Commission, I want to thank you all for your time and commitment to review these recommendations and provide your direction and approval. So in July, the Commission actually appointed a subcommittee to review the grant application questions and the scoring process and to recommend revisions. So as a subcommittee, the work began in late July. The members of the subcommittee include Commissioner Rita Cosgrove, Commissioner Peter Wynn, myself as I chaired the subcommittee, and then we also worked very closely with Karen Davis, who is our liaison and the Cultural Arts Grant Administrator. We also communicated with and gathered input from the various stakeholders who are listed here. So our goals were to develop recommendations for revisions to the application questions and scoring. And we also set a goal to ensure alignment with the HOT requirements, city and commission goals, and the grant guidelines. The next step is to gain commission and stakeholder approval, and then also to implement for the 24-25 grant application cycle. So again, in assuring that the application aligns with the Texas tax code, better known as the hot tax, we, in which states that the revenue is to be used to promote tourism and that it aligns with one of the stated specific purposes, being the one that applies to us is the encouragement, promotion, improvement, and application of the arts. We also ensured, as stated in the Cultural Arts Commission Grant Manual, we ensured alignment with city funding guidelines that the city has established that the awarded funds can be used only for endeavors which support the arts and events activities within the city and which bring people into the city. And then finally, we ensured alignment with the commission goals and that are stated in the grant manual, and that is to encourage the recognition, awareness, enrichment, and outreach, education, and participation in the arts. And we also look for the arts group's activities to align and mirror these goals. So the assessment process that we followed, we first began with research. We looked at best practices of other cities, other areas that have similar grant programs. We reviewed HOT and other tax code guidelines. We looked at the city goals, the grant manual, and took in input from stakeholders. We then began to review the existing questions, and we revised them, we eliminated some, and we added some. We determined the appropriate response type and then assessed the scoring and weighting of the questions. We provided monthly updates to the commission and also to some of our stakeholders along the way. And then now we're at the point of gaining approval. So this has already, our grants administrator actually met with city legal, budget, and executive management, who had indicated their comfort level with these recommendations. The Cultural Arts Commission actually voted on Thursday to approve these recommendations, and I want to thank Councilman Holmer for attending that very long meeting last Thursday night. And then upon your direction, we hope to implement the changes that we're proposing so they will coincide with the opening of the grant application, which will open next month. So we identified a number of areas to assess in the current application, including how the applicants are evaluated, what questions we're asking, and how the applications are scored. So in the evaluation, the current application is more organizational focused with less emphasis on the organization's specific performance or event. And so we're not able to determine as well which events are funded by city grant dollars, and therefore it doesn't allow for evaluation of the use of hot revenue. And it's also unclear whether that funding is being used for events that are within or outside of the city. So in the proposed changes, we will drill down to the specific events and which events are being requested for use of city funding. We'll be able to better evaluate funding usage and actual program costs versus just general overhead cost. And then we'll also be able to better itemize, or expenses will be better itemized, allowing the commissioners to better evaluate the specific use of funds and program costs. And then the questions overall have been refined to make them more relevant and so that there's less overlap, and the applicants will have a better understanding of the information that we're actually asking for, so then therefore they're able to give better answers, and then the commissioners are better able to evaluate their applications for funding. And then finally, the scoring. We assigned scoring that's weighted based on each question's significance to the stated city goals and funding guidelines. And the proposed application is more all-encompassing, taking in not only additional questions, but we can now score their performance against other grant requirements and standards, as well as documents that they upload to the grant application. So just to give you a visual, we're proposing that we go from 20 questions to 12 questions. And we put those questions into 3 buckets, the largest being funding guidelines, another bucket for organizational information, and then one for performance milestones, which is basically they're meeting some of the performance standards of the grant. So now I'll go into further detail on those revisions. The category of funding guideline questions, there will actually be 7 questions that will score them 50 out of 100 total points, so 50% of the score. And these are questions that support art and culture within the city of Plano, which evaluates their bringing people into the city of Plano. So we'll better be able to identify which events are actually using city funding, and better able to tie specific or expenses to specific events, performances, or exhibits versus overhead. The organizational questions will give us insight into the organization's operational and financial stability. And then finally, the performance milestones. This will be 20% of the application. There will be 8 questions, and they will actually be scored by or answered by the grants administrator. So the applicants don't have to worry about this. They just need to get their information in on time and follow their instructions. But the grant administrator will actually answer yes, no to questions about timely reporting, required attendance to our commission meetings, responsiveness, whether they recognize the city as providing funding to them, and things like that. So that's 20% of the application. And then we have 4 general questions. 2 are actually for the events groups, and then 4 for all of the groups. And these are just questions that give them an opportunity to tell us maybe what we did not ask in the application. For the events groups, it's just basic details about venue and date. And these are not scored, but just they're good information for us to have. So to summarize our proposed changes, we have refined the questions to align closer with the grant requirements. There were fewer questions in that we removed those that are no longer relevant and those that were overlapping or redundant. We've incorporated questions that tie to the documents that they upload to their application that we were not previously able to score. We've incorporated scoring for a number of the grant requirements, such as reporting meeting attendance and recognition of the city. We will, through these new questions, we'll be able to drill down to specific events and which events are requested for use of city funding. The expenses will be better itemized, allowing commissioners to see the specific use of funds and actual program costs versus just general overhead cost. And the scoring will be weighted based on its significance to the city funding guidelines. So overall, these revisions provide clarity, but they do not change the grant funding requirements. They improve the application process for the arts and events groups by making the questions clearer and easier to answer, and for the commission in that they will have better information for making funding recommendations that meet the city guidelines. And so today we are asking for your approval to move forward to implement these revisions for the 2024-25 application, which opens on February 5th. Any questions?
Thank you, Diane. Any questions for Ms. Goebel? Well, it looks like you guys put a lot of time and effort into refining these questions, and we appreciate all that work. I'm sorry. Councilmember.
Well, I didn't have a question, just comments. I just wanted to applaud the work of the commission. It was a long meeting, but it needed to be, all those discussions needed to be had, and I thought there was great discussion, and you were very thorough. You took in the input of the arts groups, and I think they appreciated really trying to get an understanding of what's important during the application process, and for you to hear from them what was important. So I just was really pleased to see all that went into reviewing the applications. One discussion Diane and I had afterwards, I really like they added into the point process if people, if the groups put their events on their calendar, but I didn't realize the calendar is not public facing, and so maybe I'm not bringing this up as a future comment right now, but maybe at some point we could discuss a way, if we're already giving them points and incentivizing the arts groups to put their events out on a calendar, it to be out on the public for us all to be able to see, so that we can help encourage people to attend their events. So just overall, thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to make a comment. I did read all the questions that was done and the revisions that were done, and I thought they were very clear and very easy to read and easy to understand. However, I do ask that instead of just laying it to rest, that this is it, this is going to be our golden rule forever, that we continue to upgrade it and make revisions as issues come up. The one thing that I do believe would be a potential issue is for people who may not be as fluent in the American culture or the English language, that they may need more hand-holding, and perhaps there may be some misunderstanding or misinterpreting these questions based on their understanding of the language. That's all I have. So
Certainly.
I appreciate all the work that you guys went through. And I love the fact that Julie was there and I wasn't. So
No, thank you. And we do actually review these. In fact, they were revised about 4 years ago. So that's an indication that, yeah, nothing is forever. Things are continually improved and updated and made relevant. And also, Karen also holds a training session with all of the applicants, and it will be required for all of them this year. So they will definitely get some hand-holding and a chance to ask questions about the application in general, and plus these, any revisions to it. So, yeah, thanks for your input.
Terrific.
Anyone else?
Anybody else? So is everybody amenable to the moving forward with the new questions and the format?
Excellent. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Well, we will be ready for the opening of the grant
you're right.
application on February 5th with these changes. Thank you so much.
All right, next item, consent and regular agendas. Any item council member would like to remove? I think we have one. H?
Correct.
Remove item H for just
Clarification.
clarification. Any other item? Okay. And then council items for discussion, action, or future agendas. We'll take a recess and return at 7. I now declare that the Plano City Council reconvened in open session, that all members are present, with the exception of Mayor Pro Tem Prince, who will be on Zoom, and Council Member Smith, who will be on Zoom. We'll begin tonight's regular meeting with the invocation led by Reverend Dr. Kyle Dennis with the First Christian Church of Plano, and the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge led by Girl Scout Troop 6553 of McMillan High School. Would you please rise?
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for tonight. We thank you for a room like this filled with volunteers and employees and concerned citizens, a place that we can come to share our ideas and have our influence heard. I thank you for all these who serve, for all the experience that they have, for the heart that they have to see our community thrive. We know that we're entering into a year that in many ways promises to be contentious. There may be a lot of tempers and disagreements and conflicts, but we pray, Lord, for this year in this room, that this could be a place of peace, that this could be a place where people truly listen to one another and let everyone's voice be heard and seek consensus. We know that for those who make decisions, it's never possible to satisfy everyone. But I ask, Lord, that you would let them seek to satisfy justice. Let them seek to listen, to discern, to work together and collaborate with each other and with the citizens of our community so that we might move forward together and grow in wholeness and unity and peace. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. Be seated. Come up here and let's take a picture. Thank you, guys. Thanks for doing that. Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda.
All right. Consent agenda. The consent agenda will be acted upon in one motion and contains items which are routine and typically non-controversial. Items may be removed from this agenda for individual discussion by a council member, the city manager, or any citizen. The presiding officer will establish time limits based upon the number of speaker requests.
Thank you. Do I have a motion on the consent agenda? We have pulled item H.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move we approve the consent agenda except for item H for individual consideration.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with the exception of item H. Please vote. How do you vote, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 8-0. Item H.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Item H was pulled because we were in the process of, oh, you have to read it first, I'm sorry.
So.
Jumping the
no,
gun.
We're good.
Ready for football, I'm sorry.
Item H, to approve an expenditure for management of the Plano Mayor's Summer Internship Program for a one-year contract in the amount of $100,000 up to $150,000 if certain fundraising tiers are accomplished from Amber Zuckerman, and authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents.
All right, Mayor and Council, Andrew Fortune, Director of Policy and Government Relations. Since we had the deadline for posting the agenda, we have continued our negotiations with this consultant for the mayor's summer internship, and so the financial consideration has changed, as well as the structure. It will now be a flat number. $130,000 will be the amount that is paid to the consultant for the same fundraising efforts and program management for the program. But I wanted to highlight that for y'all, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. But
So, but just for a little bit of more clarity, we're kind of moving into a new phase of the Plano Mayor Summer Internship Program. We're trying to solidify kind of that substance for 10 months for the person that's going to basically run the program. And this will be a new person. And so we interviewed several people, and they all kind of had these same kind of restrictions, but we feel like this is going to help expand the program, have more students be able to have internships. And so this will probably be able to grow the program. And again, a lot of our problems were the pandemic, but I think even coming out of that, we have a lot of companies that want to be involved, just don't know how, and I think this will help broaden that potential. Okay. Motion?
Mr. Mayor, I think, first of all, if I may comment, I've witnessed this firsthand. You've done a fabulous job, of course, as carrying on from the previous mayor, Harry Larossier, and I can say the students wholeheartedly participate, and I think it's a joy to see the activities that these kids do. They do a lot of good work, and I'd like to make a motion we approve agenda item H.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion, and a second for agenda item, or consent agenda item H. Please vote. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 8-0. Thank you. Next item.
Public hearing items. Applicants are limited to 15 minutes presentation time with a 5-minute rebuttal if needed. Remaining speakers are limited to 30 total minutes of testimony time with 3 minutes assigned per speaker. The presiding officer may amend these times as deemed necessary. Non-public hearing items. The presiding officer will permit public comment for items on the agenda not posted for a public hearing. The presiding officer will establish time limits based upon the number of speaker requests, length of the agenda, and to ensure meeting efficiency, and may include a cumulative time limit. Speakers will be called in the order requests are received until the cumulative time is exhausted. Item number 1, public hearing and consideration of an ordinance to designate a certain area within the City of Plano as tax increment financing reinvestment zone number 5 of the City of Plano, Texas, establishing the boundaries of such zone, creating a board of directors for said reinvestment zone, and other matters related thereto, providing a repealer clause, a severability clause, and an effective date.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Peter Brasser, Director of Special Projects. Before you is an item bringing back to you to formalize what we discussed in October, which is establishment of a TERS in the legacy area. This action and public hearing is about the establishment, not about how it's going to spend its money. That happens later. So tonight is just the ordinance and the project draft project plan. And that all comes back to you again after the board, once you name them, reviews it. Happy to answer any questions or start the public hearing.
All right. Any questions for Peter? Thanks, Peter. I'll open the public hearing.
There are no speakers.
All right. I'll close the public hearing, confine the comments to the council. Anthony?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I did have a comment. So I think this is obviously a great TERS that's going to move the city forward through a critical redevelopment that will help make Plano a life sciences hub. So I'm very much in favor of this. I did have one piece of feedback on the project plan, which is that the 2% projected annual growth is very conservative, which is good. You wouldn't want to overshoot that, but it also means that there's a substantial likelihood that the increment will exceed that, and that the new revenue to the city that is not necessary for the development agreement or for other activities that will be foreseen in the project plan could exceed the amount that might be expected based on that projection. So when this comes back to us, I'd love to see language in the project plan that talks about how we will use excess funds if we end up with increment that is above the projection, to make sure that we know how that's going to be used, ideally for public infrastructure within the TERS zone. And then if there are no public infrastructure needs within the TERS zone, returned to the general fund so it can be used for infrastructure elsewhere in the city. And I know we're not, as Peter talked about, we're not considering the project plan tonight, but I figured rather than send this to the TERS board we'll be appointing and then have it come back to us and we say, actually, we'd like to make a change, send it back to y'all, come back to us. I thought, hey, we could give that direction tonight. So I would, I guess, make a motion that we approve this with the added direction that the project plan, before it be presented to the TERS number 5 board, make that change, that additional revenue beyond that projected in this project plan would be used for public infrastructure in the TERS zone, or if there are no such needs, returned to the general fund.
We may have to come back with some, make sure that.
Oh, am I?
That's legal.
We're not noticed to give that kind of direction? I see.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry.
But we will definitely take that under consideration.
Gotcha.
When we
Well,
get.
sorry to get outside of the notice.
No,
but
no,
anyhow.
no.
I concur with Councilman Riccadelli's sentiment, and I'll second whatever legal form that motion takes.
I think the base element is the creation of the TERS zone. I think we can take the general direction back and be able to bring that back at a different time, but rather than, if you wouldn't mind amending your motion to not have that as part of it.
I will amend my motion to just pass this. Sorry, my microphone's off. I'll amend my motion to pass the item as presented and create TERS number 5.
Okay. Are you seconding that, Shelby?
Yes, second, and Deputy Mayor Pro Tem had a good suggestion to add that as a future agenda item.
Yes.
Like everything Councilman Riccadelli just said.
Yes, I would love to do that. Great idea, Deputy Mayor.
There you go. All right. I have a motion and a second to approve item number 1. Please vote. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item.
Item number 2, public hearing and consideration of an ordinance as requested in Subdivision Ordinance Amendment 2023-004 to amend Article 1, General Provisions, Article 3, Plating Procedures, and Article 7, Replating Procedures of the Subdivision Ordinance of the City, Ordinance Number 2017-11-4, as heretofore amended to clarify the plating procedures for properties that receive zoning variances for minimum yards, and providing a penalty clause, a repealer clause, a savings clause, a severability clause, a publication clause, and an effective date. Petitioner, City of Plano.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and Executives. I'm Christina Day, the Director of Planning, and this is a subdivision ordinance amendment. The purpose behind this is really due to the fact that we have a duplicative process within the city related to plats, and that's because the Planning and Zoning Commission considers plats under the subdivision ordinance, and the Board of Adjustment considers variances to standards under the zoning ordinance. And when we deal with building setback lines, that requires essentially a twofold process for applicants. So that has presented somewhat of a hardship to people because the yard and setbacks in the zoning ordinance then require also building lines to be placed within the subdivision ordinance. So there's two processes then. So a replat application needs to be reviewed by staff, go through P&Z. Once there's conditional approval, that goes through to the Board of Adjustment, where we have a variance application that's required. Staff reviews that. There's a Board of Adjustment meeting. A variance is approved. A plat's then recorded and a permit's issued. So especially for someone, a commercial project, they're used to a lot of this, but when we deal with a residential project particularly, this is a lot for people. So what we found is that maybe it would be worthwhile to have some administrative changes here. So what we're proposing is this process, which we hope is much simpler for everyone. It would be simply the variance process. So people would go through the Board of Adjustment. The Planning and Zoning Commission did feel more comfortable with, once the variance is approved, having that information filed of record by the applicant themselves before a permit's issued. So that is one amendment here. We did not have any feedback from the public on this proposal, but the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend this with a vote of 6-0. So that's the end of my presentation, but I'm available to answer questions that you might have.
All right. Deputy Mayor.
Christina, just so that I'm clear, I'm kind of dense in following this process. So can you give like an example of what it is that a residential developer would have to go through now versus what is it going to be in the future?
Certainly. So right now, people submit two different applications. They submit a replat application. They actually go through the process of hiring a surveyor to prepare a plat, submit an application to the planning department. Staff reviews that. They go to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then once they get that approval, they then move to the Board of Adjustment process. That can be concurrent. They're submitting a variance application. That's going through a staff review.
So why do they have to do a variance application after they've already got the platting already done?
Because the plat is filed at the county of record. And so in order, that is not changed by the variance. The variance process says I don't have to meet this requirement generally, but then you've still got that record at the county once the plat's, because the plat's still a record at the county, even once you've got your variance, it doesn't change that record that's existing. So that's why we've got this conflict. That's why we're proposing this process.
So for example, if I got a plat and then I've already got it all registered and submitted to the county, now I want to redevelop it in a certain way in accordance with City of Plano. I have to go through City of Plano to do that. So now we're going to simplify the process by doing what?
We're simplifying the process to say, if you go through the variance process, that essentially gives you credit for the
county
replat process. Exactly.
Got it. Thank you.
Mayor, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Christina, can you explain a little bit more what you said about the commission wanting you to change something about your recommendation regarding the applicant filing the record versus the city?
Sure. Previously, they wanted transparency, I believe, about this. So they added that the variance will be recorded in the county records by the applicant with proof of recording provided to the city prior to issuance of a building permit. So and that the staff would develop a form to provide to the applicant filing instructions for the approved variance pursuant to that subsection. So that is part of that process where the applicant is going to provide proof of recording, and the form is going to be provided by staff.
Okay, so we're just saying they're going to have to go file something with the county and show proof that they did that to us?
Yes.
Okay.
That way, it's a record that runs with the property to essentially offset the idea, because the plat is not going to go away. The plat's still going to be a land record at the county. And so the thought there is that if you're doing a deed search, you see the plat, you see that setback still on the plat, but you also have this variance record that shows that that line, that setback
approved
line
to be
has been
changed.
varied. Exactly.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions for Christina? All right. Oh, sorry, Rick. Go ahead.
That's okay, Mayor. Christina, while I can still talk here, you know, I'm all for anything that's more efficient and provides less hassle to our residents and people that are doing business in the city. What I'd like, just a guesstimate, I'm sure we looked at it, what kind of time savings do you think we're talking about here for people that will be using the new process that you're recommending versus what we have now?
I think because these processes can run concurrently, the substantial savings is really on the plat preparation, and there's a substantial cost savings, I would suggest, too, because of the lack of plat preparation. So I don't know exactly how much it would cost, but I would say it's substantial. Because they've got to find someone to prepare the plat and pay for that plat preparation. So whatever time frame that is, be it, I would say somewhere between 2 and 3 months.
No, that's all I wanted to hear. That's excellent, Christina. Thank you.
All right.
I have
Any other, I'm sorry, go ahead.
In this new streamlined process, if the applicant say that variance is not approved, what is the process for the applicant at that point?
Then if this is not approved, it's just going to add that additional 2 or 3 months of hiring and waiting for the preparation and the additional fees of paying that for that process.
Would that, at that point, go through P&Z?
It would then still go through P&Z.
And then follow the old process again with the variance?
Exactly. You're back to that, which is just stays with what we have today.
Oh, I just had a comment, Mayor, but I just wanted to thank the planning staff for their work on this. This is the kind of thing where I think in a lot of organizations, you know, you might have if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know, we're not really noticing a huge problem. The burden is on somebody else. And I think there are a lot of organizations that would operate that way. But this just demonstrates how the planning staff and the whole city organization, you know, live our serve values and you know, really live up to the name of the city of excellence to take a look at something that may not have been, you know, causing huge glaring problems and saying, you know, this could be better for our residents. This could be more user-friendly. And so I think this is, you know, sometimes we talk about innovation and, you know, being open to doing things a different way. This is a great example of that, you know, just saying, hey, we could improve on the status quo. So kudos to y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'll open the public hearing. Any speakers?
There are no speakers.
I'll close the public hearing, confine the comments to the council.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve agenda item number 2. Please vote. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Councilman Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 8-0. Item number 3.
Item number 3, public hearing and consideration of an ordinance as requested in zoning case 2023-027 to amend Article 16, parking and loading of the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the city, ordinance number 2015-5-2, as heretofore amended to modify off-street parking requirements and providing a penalty clause, a repealer clause, a savings clause, a severability clause, a publication clause, and an effective date. Petitioner, City of Plano.
Right. This zoning case is a request to amend the off-street parking requirements. It is intended as an interim measure. The city is undergoing a full review of parking as part of a zoning ordinance update that is kicking off likely in the spring. The council should see a contract for that on an upcoming agenda for a full review of the zoning ordinance update that was funded in the last budget process. So the challenges we're experiencing are just that our existing parking minimums are a challenge. They're rooted in really older standards and are geared towards new construction, and we just don't have that much new construction. A lot of what we're doing today is redevelopment. We have some flexibility in the ordinance, but again, it's usually at a substantial expense. And so much of what we're doing right now with redevelopment and repurposing of buildings, our ordinance just doesn't meet. It doesn't recognize new technology and market trends. So we need an interim solution because we're just, again, burdening people in the interim. So we are looking to solve two issues. One, challenges with uses that are different from the original use that was approved on the site, but that's still allowed by right in the zoning district. And secondly, challenges with small infill sites, redevelopment, and expansions that are unable to meet the parking requirements along with other requirements of the ordinance. So we did a review of existing requirements in other cities, and we found that there are a lot of other cities that have administrative flexibility or change of use flexibility in their ordinance. There's an example of cities in Texas and around the country that allow for flexibility in their ordinance related to parking. So based on that, we looked at our own ordinance and tried to come up with something that was practical for the city. And the proposal that is before you with regard to change of use is really something that I think is kind of a self-determination, is the way I look at it, where the owner takes responsibility for oneself. It's like, okay, I'm not going to meet the city's minimum standards, but I'm going to take responsibility for my property. So they have to manage their own parking on site, just agree, hey, I know I'm not meeting the minimum, but I'm going to manage it and make sure that there's not an adverse effect on my neighbors. That needs to be filed with the county land records to ensure that there's transparency if the property should change hands, that we know that that is really clear to the new buyer, that they have to meet that obligation moving forward. The downtown business government district's excluded because that's excluded in the language today. There's a number of exclusions in that district where that district has credit for public parking options, exemptions to parking, reduced parking standards, so continuing with that type of exclusion from other parking allowances. Then proposed for infill, redevelopment, or expansion is an administrative reduction of 10% with the approval of the director or designee, and then 20% with the Planning and Zoning Commission. And this is based on standards that are listed in the ordinance. And this would allow for removing existing reductions. There's also standards in there where we found there might be conflicts, things like condominium owners, because we want to make sure that everyone knows if one owner is proposing, others are aware, and it doesn't create hardships on others. That was our primary focus. So we looked at things like property standards, how many parking violations are there in the city today, to try to make sure that we were really trying to be mindful of the rights of everyone citywide. So this is consistent, we believe, with the comprehensive plan. We've referenced the guiding principles, land use policy, community design, and revitalization of retail shopping centers policy. We did not get responses regarding this and the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval with a vote of 7-1. So with that, we are available for questions you might have on this amendment.
Thank you. Any questions for staff on this item? Anthony?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. So first of all, this is another great example of innovative thinking that will allow redevelopment and changes of use. I did have a quick question because I saw language in the ordinance that says it is an offense for the owner to fail to adhere to the letter agreement. What kind of an offense are we talking about? What do we anticipate would happen? Suppose somebody says, sure, I'll make sure there's no impact on my neighbors, and, there's overflow parking all over the place all the time. What type of enforcement action would we take in that situation?
That language is included to make it an offense under the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So it would be, we would be able to prosecute under the zoning ordinance.
Okay, gotcha. And if somebody's not complying with the letter agreement, could they lose the kind of waiver of the normal parking requirements, or what would, I guess, what would be the likely outcome of a successful enforcement action if somebody's not adhering to their letter agreement?
I think it would be a zoning violation run through property standards.
Okay.
So it would be their normal process where they send a notice of violation, people can comply. If not, it goes through the court process. Typically, I believe it's a fine if they're not. But
it's a Class C misdemeanor.
Okay.
And if it's a health and safety issue, it can be up to $2,000. Otherwise, it's up to $500 set by the judge.
Okay, gotcha. And would that be 2,000, per violation? Like, would each day be?
Yeah, each and every day it occurs as a separate violation.
Okay, gotcha. I just wanted to make sure that, if somebody, I'm sure most people would not do this, but if somebody were to sign a letter agreement, not perhaps intending to adhere to it, that we have, sufficient stick to, to make sure that they do. So anyway, but I think this is, like the last item, very innovative and will help spur redevelopment. So thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Rick?
Just real quick, I think, getting to your point, Commissioner Riccadelli, Councilman Riccadelli, I think really what we're looking at here, particularly when we're looking at the letter there, economics will drive that. Because if the business, particularly as an existing business, and they repurpose that business and it becomes gangbusters and it all of a sudden increases the number of people going across the threshold, then that will trigger where there's going to be additional parking requirements, okay? And he can't service those people. If you can't park to get across the threshold, you just won't go there. So he would probably more than likely have to relocate. So that was really more the impetus here of what we're looking at with regards to the shared space, if you will, for parking. I really like this part where we're taking the approach, I do agree with you, taking the innovative approach of reducing our gray deserts, which we have throughout the city, whether it's neighborhood corners or it's neighborhood centers. And it frees up a lot of space that we can either turn green space or redevelop for new buildings. But I think when we look at the enforcement side, the economics will drive it more than anything. And that's just kind of where we're looking at. You're seeing that today when you go to a coffee shop on Independence and you can't find any parking spot in the front. So you go to the side of the building and use one of the spaces over there. So that's just kind of an observation. And I think planning's done outstanding job on this. And I looked at the meeting that P&Z had on this, and it went extraordinarily long. And the comments that were presented there were just fantastic. And so I thought what the recommendation is just fantastic. But
Thank you. All right. Thank you. I'll open the public hearing.
There are no speakers.
Close the public hearing. Confine the comments to the council.
Mr. Mayor, motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve item number 3. Please vote. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 8-0. Thank you. Item 4.
Item number 4, public hearing and consideration of an ordinance as requested in zoning case 2023-020 to amend the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the city, ordinance number 2015-5-2, as heretofore amended, so as to amend Plan Development-124-Neighborhood Office on 7.1 acres of land located on the east side of Independence Parkway, 810 feet north of 15th Street in the city of Plano, Collin County, Texas, to modify development standards, directing a change accordingly in the official zoning map of the city, and providing a penalty clause, a repealer clause, a savings clause, a severability clause, a publication clause, and an effective date. Petitioner, City of Plano.
All right, this zoning case 20 is a very unique zoning case because it actually was initiated as a private development case for the easternmost lot. That property was developed at one time, the building was raised, but the pad is still existing. Someone was trying to develop that. During the plan review process, late in the game, they decided to withdraw their request, but through the review process, staff discovered that the majority of lots in the plan development district, that 9 out of the 10 lots are developed, do not meet the plan development district language for lot coverage. So in discovering this, we thought this is not a good situation for these property owners. So it could become an issue with title search or something along these lines. So this is an opportunity for us to really fix this outstanding issue. This was a site plan that was adopted in 1977 with the zoning. And it shows the building footprints pretty much as they're built. So how this came to pass, we don't really know, because they're built as shown with the zoning. So even though they're non-compliant, we don't think it's out of the scope of what was intended. So it's hard to piece it together. So it makes sense in our minds to make them compliant. So we're proposing language that would essentially build in compliance for the buildings as they exist today. So with that being said, we've moved forward. This is the lot coverage. This is the old Royal Center subdivision site plan. You see the maximum lot coverage at 30%. That's what has always been. And so the proposal would be to add language to allow, or as the building size was constructed prior to tonight, whichever is greater. So we would allow those additional lot coverage, and those are estimated by staff on the right side based on our review of the site. So the comprehensive plan does show this as a community corner, so the development is consistent with the comprehensive plan. It does meet the descriptions and priorities of the comp plan. We did get a couple of responses within 200 feet, one neutral and one in support. And citywide, we did have one additional response that was in opposition. However, that individual did not choose to provide additional information. So this is the recommended language, the addition being the everything beyond or. And with that, the Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval, again, by a vote of 8-0. We are available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions regarding this item?
Just some clarification, Christine. So basically, this little tiny area, for some reason, was not in compliance.
That is correct.
And so now the proposal is to bring them into compliance.
That's correct.
And by adding some language in which to restrict the development to other than what is already there. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's correct. And it really is a mystery because the site plan was approved at basically a similar time, and it looks to be that the zoning was approved, and you'll see the site, I mean, this is what was approved by the city, so we're not sure why that would have been approved.
Was it originally to be residential?
No, it's always been this
Commercial?
office. Yes.
It's garden office.
Right.
Just
Small
assume it was the
office.
Russians. Yeah.
So in any event, but it's not in compliance with whatever
Correct.
the zoning plan was
Correct.
at that time.
We really can't figure out why the discrepancy exists.
I see, I understand. So now we're just cleaning it up to make sure that everything is brought into compliance. So in other words, someone else were to come back and try to redevelop it, they wouldn't run into any problems.
That's right. That's why that easternmost lot, we were really having problems because they wanted to rebuild the building on the existing footprint, and then it was non-compliant with the zoning. So it seemed really unfair to not allow that, but it wasn't compliant with the zoning.
Anybody else have questions? Okay. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
I'll open the public hearing.
There are no speakers.
I'll close the public hearing. Confine the comments to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion we approve agenda item number 4.
Second?
Thank you. I have a motion and a second to approve agenda item number 4. Please vote. Mayor Pro Tem,
Yes.
Councilman Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes 8-0. Item 5.
Item number 5, public hearing and consideration of an ordinance as requested in zoning case 2023-026 to amend the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the city, ordinance number 2015-5-2, as heretofore amended, granting specific use permit number 7 for new vehicle dealer on 5.4 acres of land located at the southwest corner of Tennyson Parkway and Dallas Parkway in the city of Plano, Collin County, Texas, presently zoned commercial employment, directing a change accordingly in the official zoning map of the city, and providing a penalty clause, a repealer clause, a savings clause, a severability clause, a publication clause, and an effective date. Petitioner, SRHC, Platinum Park Phase 2, LP.
Right. Zoning case number 26 is our final zoning case of the evening. It is a request to grant SUP number 7 for a new vehicle dealer. It's located, property's located at the southwest corner of Dallas Parkway and Tennyson Parkway. This is the location, both a locator map and the property as it exists today. It is an undeveloped piece of land, and you can see the notice boundaries on the left. So this is the proposed preliminary site plan from the applicant. You can see they are proposing a somewhat unusual development for a new vehicle dealer. It is a multi-story building that includes a parking garage. This is the building design, both the north and east elevations. You see a 5-story building and a 2-story structure as well along the tollway frontage. These are the west and south elevations, and these relate directly to the plan development stipulations that are proposed to be included to require this kind of non-traditional building design as part of the dealership, so that it is more similar to the office development that is envisioned by the comprehensive plan in this area. So the comprehensive plan does designate this property as an employment center on the future land use map. It's directly south of the urban activity centers. The undeveloped land policy does state that Plano will reserve remaining land for high-quality development with distinctive character prioritizing businesses offering skilled employment. So that's a focus of the analysis for this area. The proposal does meet or mostly meet the majority of comp plan standards and is neutral to others. There are a number of issues addressed in the staff report, including the new dealer vehicle use. There have been a number of dealers approved along the Dallas North Tollway since 2004. And part of our challenge has been that these are often difficult to reuse or redevelop, and we feel like the form of development is what's unique about this proposal, and that's why the stipulations are being proposed as part of this SUP. Additionally, undeveloped land policy is addressed, and therefore the adjacent uses are also a consideration. So you'll see the stipulations being 2 stories for the office and showroom, service area and parking structure of the dealership at 5 stories and 60 feet. These are as proposed as they were originally submitted to the city. Service bays are not oriented towards the primary streets. And canopies and shade structures can be constructed, but are not allowed within 60 feet of the primary streets. And then at least 65% of the parking spaces shall be located interior to a parking structure. So with that, we had no responses within 200 feet, and 2 responses citywide, 1 opposed and 1 in support. There is an update to this ordinance. We had some challenges with the legal description. So both the legal description itself as Exhibit A and the legal description that is included on the zoning exhibit have been replaced in the ordinance. So that, I believe, has been distributed to the council and is shown on the screen. So these 2 exhibits are being replaced in the ordinance. The Planning and Zoning Commission did recommend approval by a vote of 7-1 with stipulations as noted in their report to the council. And with that, the applicant does have a presentation for you, and staff is available for questions you might have.
Okay. Any questions for staff? All right.
Thank you.
I'll open the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor, Council, Bill Dahlstrom, 2323 Ross Avenue. I'm going to just take a few minutes. This is really an exciting project. I'm really privileged to be here on behalf of this request. We're moving the Porsche dealership from Plano Parkway to this location. A new innovative concept as far as dealerships go, calling it Destination Porsche. And I think it has a lot of different connotations, but I think as far as the city goes, these Porsche dealerships are destination for folks outside of the city. So this is going to play a lot of different roles in the city. I'd like to thank Christina and her staff for their help shepherding us through this process. But with us tonight, we have Harry Brumley, who's with AutoNation, who can put a lot more color behind the concept. But we also have our team of engineers, architects online. Luke Franz are my colleagues here. We got a whole team here in case anybody has any questions. But I'm going to turn it over to Harry and let Harry get into the concept of Destination Porsche. Thank you.
Well, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. And I want to thank P&Z staff again. You know, I got to tell you something. What a professional group. And without their time and their guidance and the professional manner in which they've guided us through this, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I want to really thank you. It's really been amazing. AutoNation, you know, we're a public company. We're one of the largest retailers of automobiles in the country. We have 300 dealerships from coast to coast, and we have 2 here in Plano, not just the Porsche, but next door, right next door to Porsche is Audi. And Porsche and Audi today are crushed. They are fabulous, premium automotive franchises. We've been very successful, and we love these facilities. We love the location. But the facilities, both facilities, are completely obsolete. They're completely outdated. We are on top of one another. We've taken all sorts of steps to try and work around this. We have off-site parking. We purchased a remote service facility where we do heavy service for both of these franchises just down the road. But the time is here. If we're going to grow these franchises, if we're going to grow the employment base that's related to them, we've got to do something. So you know what we did? We sat down and we took a long look at this site and we said, okay, look, let's see how we can redo this all right where we are today. They share 10.5 acres where they are today. You know what the problem is though, guys? When you take a look at a facility like this and the substructure it takes to support that type of vertical development, you know what you got to do? Take our Porsche where it is today. You'd have to come in, knock the building down, completely remove the foundation, rework all the substructure, and rebuild it. You know what the problem is? What do you do with Porsche in the meantime? There's no place to put it. And we looked all around. Is there a place that we could put them temporarily for a couple of years while we could do that and then come back and redevelop Audi? It's not there. It's not there. So my bosses came to me and they said, you know what? You got to go and you got to find a new place. We got to relocate Porsche. And I said, okay. I started to walk out and they said, but you know what? It's more than that. If we're going to rebuild Porsche, we want to make a statement. Plano is a market where we want to make a statement. Destination Porsche has been developed in a few other places, but not like this. Folks, this is a $40 million proposition, the biggest I've ever done. I've been with AutoNation since the day they started in 1995. And I'm going to tell you, this is it. This is amazing. You know, I may be a little biased, but I'm going to tell you something. City of excellence, that's excellence. That's Plano. That's what you want. And if we're going to do that, I need a site that goes with that. I've got to have that. And when we started looking and we found this site at Tennyson, this is it. That's where this makes sense. Now, you know, I'm going to tell you something. This is an opportunity to take a look at it. And I know it's a challenge. We're going to need your support with regards to the zoning and the land use. But this is an opportunity for both of us. Because once we're done and we move Porsche up here, you know what we're going to do? Then we can address Audi. And we can grow both franchises. And we can add employment at both places. And we'll make a statement there as well. So I'm just going to tell you, that's where I am on this. I'll answer any questions you've got. But when they said this is exciting, this is as exciting as it gets in my world. Thank you again, and I'll answer any questions you have. And if I can't, these guys can.
Thank you, Harry. I appreciate it. Any questions for the applicant? Go ahead, Shelby.
I'll tip my hand by saying I love the concept, but when it does come time to address Audi, for the same reasons that you couldn't just raise and rebuild the Porsche dealership on the existing site, what do you think you have in mind to do with the Audi dealership?
That's a great question. We'll move it over to where Porsche used to be because there's 10.5 acres there. So we take Audi where they are today, we scoot them over to where Porsche used to be because Audi actually has the better spot. Then we can completely destroy that site, take out the foundations, and we can rebuild a destination type of facility there. Then we'll have 5 acres left, right? This is the best part. We can clear that and bring another franchise in with more employment and more income.
Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you. We good? Any more? All right. I'll close close the public hearing, confine the comments to the council.
Well, since I already tipped my hand, I'll go ahead and make the motion to approve.
Second.
I'll second.
Oh, there you go, Rick.
Thanks, we got to mix it up a little.
All right. I have a motion and a second to approve agenda item number 5. Please vote. As amended, excuse me, I apologize. Could we make sure that's
For
done?
formality, I make a motion to approve as amended and corrected.
Go ahead and second. Again, Julie.
Second.
Okay. Oh, it was Rick. Sorry. It was Rick, Alice. All right. All in favor, please vote.
Yes.
Thank you, Casey. Rick?
Yes.
Thank you. So we have a 7 and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much.
Yes. Quite all right. Item number 6, consideration to approve an expenditure for legislative consulting services to pursue passage of legislation authorizing the City of Plano to engage in qualified hotel projects for an initial 18-month term with one 24-month city optional renewal and the amount of $126,300 from BTA Professional Service LLC, and authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents.
All right, well, Mayor and Council, this is a follow-up to my previous presentation at an earlier meeting regarding Plano becoming authorized to access this economic development tool. I did want to make the distinction. This is not in relation to any specific project. This is just our engaging a lobbyist to move forward this next legislative session in authorizing the City of Plano to utilize this tool. Of course, if we identify a project in the future that we think this tool would work for, we'd bring it back to the council for consideration. Economic development would, and we put it on individual because I understand some council members have disagreement on it, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have and provide any other detail.
In reiterating, Mayor and Council, this is for a singular issue that the lobbyists would be working, and they would still be working under the direction of Andrew, but they would have some latitude to represent us along those lines. So we would have it as controlled as possible, understanding the challenges with being able to work the legislature. So we're going to suggest that we trust Andrew to be able to supervise that as much as possible, understanding some of the latitude that may be required for this.
Anthony?
Oh, thank you, Mayor. So this is basically reiterating what I said last time. I think it would be wonderful for the City of Plano to have access to this tool, and I also really do understand, the idea that this lobbyist has worked on every successful project that has gotten this approval. So I really completely understand the reason that this is being recommended. At the same time, I've just said I'm categorically opposed to taxpayer-funded lobbying, so I'll be voting no on this. And I want to issue a challenge to the legislature. If we don't do this and other cities get this and we're not in that bill, then whoever's carrying that bill, they need to be accountable for that. Whoever's not getting us that tool. If the legislature is going to say we want to get rid of taxpayer-funded lobbying, the legislature needs to be accessible to people who are not lobbyists. So I think with that challenge, I think we would be able to get them to do it even without a lobbyist. But I understand the reason we're doing this. I'll vote no.
Anybody? Go ahead, Shelby.
To echo the same sentiments, I'm all for adding this tool for qualified hotel projects. I feel very passionately that taxpayer funds shouldn't be used to directly lobby the legislature, not counting a whole host of other purposes. Nothing about my faith in Director Fortune, which is considerable, but I'll have to be voting no on this as well, and I'm happy to volunteer myself to lobby the legislature directly.
Okay. Councilmember Holman.
I'm in support of this. How much did you say we could potentially save on, get back rebated?
So it really will depend on what the project is. Just as a refresher, it would open up access to us within 1,000 square feet of the project. we would not only gather our traditional hot tax funds, we would also have the state's portion. We would also have the state's portion of all sales tax funds generated in there. So we get the 2 cents. We'd also get the 6.25. So it could be substantial. I mean, other projects, the Dallas Omni, I think, grossed over $40 million. So it really depends on the scale and the size. We also are of the size in population that we could use this tool more than once, should future councils decide to. So at minimum, I strongly recommend we join our cities in the region to add this to our tool belt.
So for, what was the amount, 126,000, we could potentially get millions of dollars back to the taxpayers.
That is correct.
To me, I equate this like, I could get TurboTax and do my own taxes, but if I can get a professional who knows what they're doing for a reasonable amount and get my money back tenfold, hundredfold, then it makes sense to do that. So I think that's a wise use of taxpayer dollars. I'm happy that you brought this to our attention.
Okay.
Second.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any comments, Rick? Any comments, Rick or Casey? Okay.
No comments.
All right, thanks. I have a motion and a second to approve agenda item number 6. Please vote. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes.
Councilman Smith?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes 6-2. 6-2. There you go. All right. Comments of public interest?
Comments of public interest. This portion of the meeting is to allow up to 3 minutes per speaker with 30 total minutes on items of interest or concern and not on items that are on the current agenda. The council may not discuss these items, but may respond with factual or policy information. The council may choose to place the item on a future agenda. I have one speaker, Lena Ashworth.
Hello. There is a prayer said before each of these meetings. We pray in Jesus' name. Proverbs 29, verse 7. The righteous care about the justice for the poor, but the wicked have no such concern. How do you think Jesus feels about us right now? A nation that supports the bombing of hospitals and the murder of 11,000 children, the murder of 35,000 people who did no wrong other than being born Palestinian. John chapter 3, verse 17. If anyone has material possessions and sees a brother or sister in need but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in that person? You see the children in Gaza are dying of starvation. They are freezing to death without shelter from the elements, and yet you do nothing. Proverbs 31, verse 9. Speak up and judge fairly. Defend the rights of the poor and needy. I ask you to do exactly the same. I'm asking you to do what Jesus, the Savior we pray to before each meeting, would ask of all of you. I'm requesting that this council pass an immediate resolution that includes the following: an immediate ceasefire, an immediate end to Israel's siege on Gaza, which has cut off access to food, clean water, medical supplies, and electricity into Gaza for over 3 months now. The end of the $3.8 billion of foreign aid the Department of Defense sends to Israel each year. The release of the 200 children currently imprisoned in Israel, and an end to Israel's illegal and brutal occupation of Palestine. Thank you.
There being no further business, we adjourn.